Hi, my name is Odessa Tosto and this is my Capstone project. In this project, I will be trying to learn the basics of law for a potential future career. I would like to teach myself the basics of law, learn from people in the field, and further my knowledge from taking law at school. I will do this by going to the courts downtown, watching trials, and writing summaries, as well as interviewing an established lawyer. Even if I don't pursue law in the future, this will help me understand the basics of the Canadian legal system and the basics of my rights. The reason I chose to present this in a video format is that I wanted to make this fun and entertaining as well as educational. So my plan for myself is to post this to YouTube to share what I've learned. Before starting to go to the trials, I wanted to get some background info on law and the basic info that I needed so that I would comprehend what was going on. So I figured I had to interview an established lawyer and shadow him and get him to tour me around the courthouse so I would know what was happening. So I went to interview him, and here's a little summary. Here's the QR code. I might put a QR code or like a link or something right here, so that if you want to listen to the full interview, it's like 40 minutes. So Michael works in employment law. His interest first started with a grade 12 law course when he was 24. He was debating whether to do teaching or law and chose the latter. He attended law school at UBC after graduating. He worked under a criminal lawyer, then articling for a corporate law firm, and finally working as a civil litigator. He is the managing partner, so most of the work he does now is administrative. Most days, he works on advancing his client's claims to different stages. The first stage is an interview with the client, the second is negotiating a resolution for the client. I also asked what the most challenging things were that come with being a lawyer. He mentioned that maintaining a good work-life balance is important and to leave the work at work. With his experience working under a criminal lawyer, it was harder to have that balance because you could get a call at 3 a.m. and your client has been arrested and you need to go in and advise them. He also mentioned that the best thing about law is the people that he works with and the clients that he has. He also enjoys learning about new jobs that he never thought existed before. He says the best way to deal with difficult clients is to not take things personally, stay calm, and be well prepared, because the more knowledge he has about the file or the case or the trial that is happening, the better prepared he is to deal with whatever makes that client difficult. He also says the essential skills for someone to be a good lawyer are people skills, critical thinking, self-control, and patience. Now that I have the basic understanding of how to become a lawyer and the skills that make a good one, time to see the first trial. The first trial took place in New York at the night court. I'll put the photo of what the night court looks right here. I thought it'd be fun to go see a trial happening in the US just to compare and contrast of Canadian courts vs American courts. Even though I got to see a night court, but I went to appeals court. But I'll still compare and contrast because I think that would be fun. So my main goal was to learn about how American courts function, especially night courts in this case. So a little summary. I watched several trials at the night courts in New York City. I found out that most night courts handle less severe charges. The only charges I saw was disorderly conduct and public intoxication. The person would come in, wait at a holding cell, be called by the judge. The judge would read procedural things, like if they understood the case and their rights. The judge would read the events that led to them being under arrest, for them being charged for that certain crime. And then they would read the charges. The accused would plead guilty or not guilty. All the ones I saw, they pleaded guilty because it was pretty minor charges. All of the charges I saw were mandatory rehab, and I think some got like community service, so it was like a mix of community service, mandatory rehab, kind of just trying to get these people out of the system because it was clear that they had probably had criminal records and been in those night courts before. So what I learned through this was these night courts handle things very quickly. Each case takes about 5 to 10 minutes from my experience of what I saw. I can only spoke about what I saw, so I'm not sure if some night courts do prolonged trials, but the ones I saw were 5 to 10 minutes, so very fast. When you see a number of less fortunate people than you who have probably gone through this a million times before, it gets very depressing very fast, and that's what I learned through this experience. Even the judge, like, you could hear in their tone and their voice, it was just like, hope you get better. You could see that these were people who were struggling and who had been put through this system a lot of times. So what I learned from this experience is I would definitely not like to work in a night court, because I think it's a rabbit hole and I would get sucked down that rabbit hole, and I would not be happy, because it was very, very depressing even through those little moments I spent there. Will I do things differently looking at the next trial? I will bring a notepad next time, because I didn't bring a notepad, so I can write more detailed notes. I will also not go into a night court again, because I would like to see more detailed cases, not ones that are 5 to 10 minutes that have the same type of charges, same type of crime and everything. Some things that were unexpected for me was I didn't expect things to be happening so fast. I was only there for like 20 minutes. I saw 3 cases of disorderly conduct. I also didn't expect to see the same prosecutor for every case. I know in these big criminal cases they have different prosecutors and different people working on the specific case, but I think these were people who were working for the night court, like prosecutors working for the night court that just deal with these cases. I also saw the same defense lawyer every single time working for the case, and they didn't say anything. It was mostly reading out charges, the accused pleading guilty, and then pretty much, yeah, that was it. So yeah, it was pretty monotonous and very depressing. Got very depressing very fast. The second trial was the Court of Appeal trial in Vancouver. The case I saw was R.V. Scott. What I hope to learn through this case was the procedural errors that happen when building up evidence for a case, and minor errors that could cause a retrial. So some background on R.V. Scott. Scott was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. So the summary of what happened during the appeal, people thought the woman might have been on something, but there wasn't strong proof she was actually on drugs, the woman being Scott. Even though she had used them before. During the trial, they found out she had schizophrenia, but the jury wasn't told that, which could have made a big difference in how they saw the case. She didn't have an official diagnosis, but she had been told that she had it. The defense isn't trying to get her completely off the hook. They just want the charge dropped from murder to manslaughter, since they're saying she didn't mean to kill anyone. She didn't have the intent to kill anyone. The judge agreed that if there was an intent, it might not be murder. The Crown was given the weekend to think it over, and the jury was told to look at how she was acting before the incident. The judge also told everyone to look at another case, R.V. Watts, that set a precedent. The precedent set by R.V. Watts affirmed the court's discretion in upholding jury decisions unless they are logically inconsistent. What I learned through this case is that if there's a procedural mistake, one can get their sentence heavily reduced. I also learned that in appeal cases, sometimes the accused doesn't even get to speak. I also learned that it is very easy for someone to suggest an appeal or propose an appeal, but it's hard for that appeal to be accepted. Some things that I found that were unexpected. I didn't expect there to be heavy security around the courtroom, just because it was an appeal case. I know for trials they have heavy security, but I didn't expect that for an appeal. I also didn't realize that in appeal cases, the respondent and the appellant don't talk to each other. They only talk to the justice, so it's more of a conversation between the justice and the appellant, or the justice and the respondent, not the respondent and the appellant together talking. For the third trial, the type of trial I was looking for was something to do money-wise, employment-wise. So what I had hoped to learn through this was about what people have a right to money-wise if they get injured and how compensation is determined. The summary of the third trial, the appellant is seeking more compensation because she claims she can no longer work due to an incident that caused her injuries. She argues that these injuries have led to ongoing health problems like migraines and depression, making it hard for her to work long hours or after hours, which could result in future loss of income. However, there isn't a lot of third-party evidence to back up her claims. The trial judge initially missed some important details about her injuries, and it was said that the judge made some unfair generalizations based on law students' typical workloads, rather than considering her specific situation. Her specific situation was that she was a law student studying, she got injured, and she is arguing that she deserves more money because the first trial she went through, she thinks that she didn't deserve enough money, and that the justice didn't specifically look at her case and made a generalization to all law students. It was also claimed that the judge made mistakes when calculating future damages, leading to her not being awarded enough money. She is now appealing in hopes of getting a larger amount, believing she was supposed to receive more than she did. She is now appealing in hopes of getting a larger amount, believing she was supposed to receive more than she did. What I learned through the third and final trial is that we as Canadians have a right to money in some ways, because in this case she predicted future money she would have had, so she is technically entitled to that money, and that accident caused her to lose that money in a way, so the court legally has to award her something if proven that those injuries affected her future income. Some things that were unexpected. I expected the appellant to be there, but in reality it was her lawyer who was present. I also didn't know that Canadian trials were filmed. This specific one was. They had the front row. I couldn't take any photos or else I would show you photos. But the front row had a little poster saying, just know if you're in the front row, you are being filmed and this is being broadcast. I'm not sure where it was broadcast to, but it was filmed. I wasn't allowed to use my personal device in there, but I didn't know that they were, I didn't expect they were filmed. So that was a kind of a cool thing to learn. Now that I've completed all of the 3 trials, here's a recap of kind of everything I've learned through these situations and these trials, and speaking with Michael, who was my mentor. I learned more details about what it's like to be a lawyer, working your way up, and how when you're a junior partner or just starting out, you won't have a lot of control over your schedule, over what you're doing. You will have to do a lot of work, but soon it will be over. And when you get to a higher position, you have not a lot of free time, but when you get to a higher position, you have more jurisdiction on doing the things that you would like to do, and those tiny little tasks like paperwork you don't have to do. I also learned that you have to maintain a work-life balance, leaving the work life at work and coming home and kind of letting that sit at work. I think that goes with any job, but I think it's important, especially for law, because you're dealing with people's lives, and sometimes it can get way too personal and you can get way too connected and promise things that you shouldn't be promising. So I think that's really important to keep in mind if I do want to pursue this in the future. I also learned the important skills to be a good lawyer, like people skills, critical thinking, self-control, and patience. And I personally think I have all those qualities, so hopefully I become a good lawyer one day if I do choose this career path. I also learned that law is a very broad term, and has many career opportunities within it. Like Michael said, he was like a student under a criminal lawyer. He worked for a corporate law firm. Now he's a civil litigator, so working with employment and everything to do with that. So I learned that law is very broad, and I can choose a specific career that I want to do. I think I would have to do more research into what specific type of law I want to work in. I think I would choose corporate, but even within corporate, it's so much more detailed than that. I also learned that minor charges are handled very fast, especially in night courts. minor criminal cases and summary offenses like traffic violations and minor infractions in court are handled very, very fast. I always thought personally that when you would have your day in court, it's very long. You have to wait there for 3 hours. But the actual time you spend having that trial, you might have to wait outside of the courtroom. But when you're spending time in that courtroom for minor infractions, it goes by very, very, very fast. What would I have done differently? I think I would have tried to take more detailed notes. It's really, really difficult to take detailed notes when you're writing in a notepad because you're not allowed a computer, you're not allowed a phone, especially if you're just a random person walking into a courtroom. So it's really hard to kind of take very concise notes and take very detailed notes. I would have also tried to find a better system on finding information on these cases after. I've looked through the internet billions of times and I cannot find these specific cases, and I've searched up the specific courtroom they were in and everything like that, and I cannot find them. For me, it was very hard to find this information, so I would have tried to maybe talk to Michael on how to access these public records in a better way, because I think the way I was doing it might have been wrong, or maybe I would have to wait until it got published or something like that. I think finding that information online I could have done better. Does law still interest you? In short, yes, but more specifically, I would like to do corporate law. As I said before, I think dealing with night court would not be good because it would make me very sad seeing people put through the court system over and over again. I also don't think I have the stomach for criminal law. For example, crimes like murder or manslaughter. I think that my emotions would get the best of me and I wouldn't be able to make a well-structured argument because I would get too personally involved and emotionally involved. I don't think family law would be good for me either because you're dealing with splitting apart a family and dealing with assets having to be split, so it gets really complicated there. I think corporate law is the best path personally for me. There's still more to figure out, so when I go into law school and I start to learn these areas of law a bit more, I'll have a better understanding of which specific law career path I want to take. But for right now, I'm not totally sure, but I think it would be something to do with corporate. So this is my final thoughts. This experience has been an amazing introduction to law. I want to continue to pursue law as a career path, and I'll try to go to the courts and learn and watch when I have time. I've also learned that law can be a very depressing career path. For example, like if you read the full transcript, when I was talking to Michael, he did talk about how alcohol abuse is really common with lawyers, which opened my eyes on really how important it is to have that separation of going to work and being at home and really not bringing that home with you. But yes, in short, I would really love to do law. I loved this experience. I think it was really fun. I think people should go to the courts more because it's a public thing. And you would assume that they don't want you there. They're so nice. Everyone is very welcoming there. And I think maybe I'll bring my friends there someday so we can go make a day of it, watch an interesting appeal, or when there's a big criminal case happening here, we could go down there and see. But yeah, I really loved this experience.